What's everyone's Matt Mrozek, and this will be work in progress number 5 on the Sosa Wolverine. So I let this dry overnight. I'm looking at it now, and I think I want to add a little more shading to the yellow. It's there, but it's like really subtle, like almost too subtle for my liking. So instead of going back in with an airbrush, I'm going to go back in with some pastels. Now I actually like the heads. I think the heads are like spot on. I'm seeing it there really well. For some reason, I'm having a hard time seeing it in the legs and the torso. So just to have a little more control and not risk the overall color, because I really like the color I have, I'm going to go in with a pastel. And this is pretty simple. I've got a glove on because this stuff gets extra. And you just take a piece of sandpaper. This is 800 grit sandpaper. And I got a set of pastels and basically just ground it up on the sandpaper so you make a powder. And then I've got a set of brushes that I keep on the side, and this is labeled pastels only, and I only use these for pastels, and that's it, nothing else, because you don't want to get your brushes mixed up that you use for painting with your pastel paints, or your pastel brushes, I should say, because you just don't want to do that. You want to have a dedicated set of brushes or brush for pastel work, because you don't want to get them wet or put any solvents or anything on them. It's just not, it makes your pastel work harder. So again, I'm seeing the shading here. It's really subtle, but I'm going to bump it up just a little bit. So I'm just going to take some of this orange. I played with I tried a little brown, like in an inconspicuous area, but it got a little muddy, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to, sorry about that. I hit stop on accident. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so you can see what I'm doing, and up a little bit more this time. So I took this orange pastel, chalk pastel, just grounded it up on some 800 grit sandpaper. So I've got my set of brushes here that I use for pastels only, and I like to use a stiff brush because I can kind of work it into the surface a little bit. So brush, and you simply put it where you want. In this case, in all the little, grooves of the muscles. And you need to have a flat surface, flat finish for this to work. Otherwise, the pastels won't stick. So, and then I just blow it up, and you want to make sure there's no spit on your lips, because you will blow spit on your piece, and then you'll have a mess to clean up because it'll hit the pastels, and that's just not good. So I'm just going to go in here. And already it's starting to, I'm just going to adjust my exposure a little bit. All right, let's try this again. Maybe I'll stop hitting stop on the camera. So anyway, and if this is too bright, I'll try to adjust it later in post. So I was having some issues trying to get the camera exposed correctly. So anyway, back to this. As I was saying, you need to have a flat surface, like a flat finish on your piece, otherwise the pastels won't stick. So I'll just go in here and I'm just going to hit the recesses. And again, when you blow on it, make sure your lips are dry. You can always, it sounds weird, but just stick your finger in your mouth and pull your finger out, like while you're doing like a kiss motion with your lips, and it'll dry your lips off. So just that little bit right there. Again, this may not show on camera because it's so bright, but I'm already seeing a difference in person. So, and you can always use excuse me, a little frog in my throat. You can always have like another kind of flat brush out to help blend them a little bit if it's a little too harsh. So that right there already made a difference. I'm not sure if this is going to show up in camera or not. So I thought I was done with the yellow, but I'm not. I'm going to bring this up just a little bit more, and I'm doing this with the pastels because I don't want to go in there with an airbrush and risk messing up the yellow I have going on because it looks really good. So I just go in there and I go in there and soften it up a little bit with that brush. Some areas are showing up really good. I think some areas I just may have blended it too much. So I probably won't have to do like all the areas like this, and just some of them, just to help bring out areas that maybe aren't showing up as well. So just add a little shadow there. So I sent a picture to Chris. He's like, I don't see the shading. I go, it's there. It's just real subtle. Some of the other photos I was sent, the shading is very, very strong. I think too strong. So I wanted to make sure that he didn't want that look, because those looked like they were maybe shadowed with some brown or base coat with brown. Again, so I'm probably just going to go through and hit the areas that I think need a little more color to the shadow area. I still want to keep this bright overall. According to Chris, I want to keep this kind of... He likes the yellow spot on. It looks really good. Overall, the colors really, really good. So then I'll have to top coat this again before I go in and do anything for the black. So that's the next step, is to do the black stripes on the suit. Sorry, I just got a little frog in my throat. But it doesn't take much. I mean, I'm not putting much on here. Again, we don't want this, we don't want to look like a striped tiger. I just want to bring out the muscle detail. So if it looks a little harsher, just go in there with the flat brush and just soften it up a little bit. And lucky for me, this orange pastel I have is just about the same color I used to base coat this, so it's like the perfect color for this. I don't have to do any custom mixing of the pastels, which is, you can do, but it's just hard to stay consistent. It's not like mixing paint where you can do like, oh, I'm going to mix 1-to-1 ratio. You just kind of have to eyeball it when you're mixing them up as far as like the mix goes. Some of these larger areas, we just go and kind of give her an overall, a little bit of shading. Like this area right here would have a slight shadow, so we're just going to kind of put a dotted pastel on there and blend it off with the soft brush. And that just adds a little bit. So right there, just that little bit of work I've done has made a huge difference in this so far. Like, this process doesn't take a whole long time. I've already got shading there. I'm just trying to bring it up a little bit more. But yeah, that's looking really good. So I'll do this one leg, and then I'll look over the other areas on the other parts and see if I feel like I need to do any on them. If I do, I will. But I don't need to record the whole process. It's the same thing, just different parts. Yeah, so right there I can tell already that this is looking much better, much more defined. I really like it. So I just have to remember to do this step when I do the Cyclops, because we're trying to use the same yellow on that piece as well. So another reason for these videos is since I'm doing several pieces and we're going to try to use the same colors, it just gives me a good record for that and my steps and my processes. Because again, a lot of times I'm just kind of flying by the handle. I'm going off the handle. I don't really, I had a plan for this, and then it kind of changed a little bit as I was getting further along. And this is one of the steps I had not anticipated, which is no big deal. So here I got a nice big shadow kind of shape. I'm just going to put a little bit in there and then use the soft brush to kind of blend it in. And some of this shading will get a little knocked down when I flat coat. Alright, so there's that process. Again, I'm not sure if this is showing up in camera with this yellow, such a high bright color, so maybe in post I can knock it down a little bit. So I'm going to do that to the rest. I'm going to re-flat coat these, and then we're going to come back and we're going to, excuse me, still have this frog in my throat. We're going to come back and do the black stripes on the torso, and that's the next step, because those are actually going to go gloss. So I have to get the yellow completely done, because that's a different finish from the black. Get the yellow done, completely done, do the black, get those glossed. That way I can mask over everything else and do the blue. So it's a process. You have to think what the layers of painting, which order you have to do them in order for masking. So that's what we're going to do. So I'll come back once this is all done and flat coat it again, and we're ready to mask for the black. Excuse me again, frog in my throat. We'll be back in a little bit. Alright, continuing on. So now I'm really happy with the yellow. I did those pastels. So I sprayed the paint and top coated this about 5 hours ago. So I'm going to see if I can go ahead and get this masked off and do the black. And the way I did the top coat, I did a little different. Before, when I first sprayed it, I put it on really wet. This time I just dusted it on there and actually gave it a much nicer finish. So I tend to spray my top coats pretty wet. Flat works better if you just dust it on. It looks more flat. The way flat coat works is basically there's microscopic plates in the top coat, and if you put on wet, sometimes they don't lay down flat, which gives it a flat look is the way they lay down. Sometimes they lay down too smooth. So so if you missed it on, they lay down more randomly. So a little information there on how flat coat works. So what I have to do next, I have to mask off this area here on the sides, and then these two areas. Now this is tricky because I have a lot of muscles to go into and mask. So what we're going to do is actually going to use 3M trim tape first. I like this because it's extremely flexible. You can stretch it a little bit. I try not to stretch my tape too much because it just puts undue tension on it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of this off, and I'm going to test it on an area where if the paint peels, it doesn't matter, just to be safe. So we're going to put it on the shoulder here. I'm going to rub it down really, really good. I'm going to rip it off. And if the paint won't come up, but the top coat might. So we're looking pretty good there. I think we're okay. So what I want to do is I want to get the black sprayed and then get the clear coat sprayed if I can tonight. So that's looking pretty good. So just do a tape test. Okay. So the trick with this is getting the tape in all these little wrinkles. So again, this is going to, even though there's not many pieces to mask, it's going to be tedious, just because of the nature of the beast. So I'm going to start off with a piece here, nice long piece, and take it off the roll, and we're going to start laying this down. And this stuff, unlike the Tamiya tape where I put it down and then I cut it, this stuff doesn't work that well because it's a vinyl tape. So you have to, I'm going to try this first, and if this isn't working so well, if it's taking too long, then I'll go to Tamiya tape. But I like this because it's easier to conform to complex shapes and curves and stuff. So I don't know, we'll see. And the reason I'm doing it this way, because Chris wants the black to be gloss coated. Now, if it was just going to be like a flat coat or even a semi-gloss, I would probably just hand paint the black and then hand paint the varnish on top. But since he wants these glossy, I've got to spray the varnish. So I think doing it this way may be a little too difficult. I think I'm going to have a hard time getting this in the areas I need. So we're going to go back to the Tamiya tape and try this. That way I can use my other method where I put it on loose. Just like basically just like that. It's real loose. And then I get my Q-tip or stick and then work it into the crevice there. Yeah, this is gonna work better. So right there's a little tricky spot because that little black stripe kind of blends in to the rest of the sculpt. So that one, that little spot I'll have to kind of eyeball it. Okay, then real carefully we're going to come in here with our backed up lid just like we did on the heads. And just go slow. The blade do the work. Okay. Let's see what that looks like. All right. That looks pretty good, actually. So, like, I'm not sure this will show up, but like right here is a spot where the tape wasn't really loose when I was putting it down. And so it wants to pull up a little bit right there. So I'm going to go back in with a little piece of tape just to make sure that I get that spot down, because those are the notorious areas for paint to come to kind of sneak through. You know what? Now I'm having second thoughts on what I want to do here. I'm wondering if I should just go ahead and hand paint the black on, then mask it with a clear coat. I don't know. I mean, no, I think I want to mask it and spray it. That way I can use my lacquers. So I won't record this whole taping process. It's just like when I did the heads, the same deal, just a different part of the kit. But again, just kind of put it on loose and then work it into the So in some areas what I'll do is like I'll work the tape to a certain point and then I'll go in and cut it to that point and then I'll continue to work it, because right here this tape has got to go over a very exaggerated muscle. If I try to force the tape down right now, it probably won't conform to that shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this down. I'm going to cut it to right down there. Again, I'm just going to go slow. You see I have my knife pointing towards the raised part that I'm masking off. That way if my knife cuts or anything, it won't cut the painted area that I've already painted. Okay, so now I can pull this back. And what that does is it releases any tension that's on the tape down in that area. And again, I got right here where the tape wants to pull up a little bit, so I'm going to do the same thing I did over here. I'm going to take a little piece, just make sure that that's down. And when you're doing this, it's better to err on the side of getting tape up on this piece a little bit and having a little yellow line. I can always go back and just touch that up with a brush. What I don't want to do is get any black on the torso, because we're doing the automotive gloss coat and that won't ever come off. I could try to sand it off, but it'd be tough. So this little tip right here, it's hard to get the tape around it, so I'm going to go in here like this. Alright, back to this little spot down here. I'm going to start working this tape again. I'll probably have to go down there with a bunch of little pieces of tape to make sure I get that. Yeah, especially in this little crease right here. Anytime you have a dramatic change of direction that you're masking, the tape is going to want to lift. So like in these little creases right here, we're going to stick a little piece down there. Way down in here. That's a backup. Didn't quite get what I wanted it. Okay. There we go. Tape stuck to my lip. So I'll just mask off this one part on camera, and then the rest I'll just do off camera, because again it's a slow, tedious process. But I do get a lot of questions, mostly from guys who build Gundam, how to mask, because it is one of the most tedious processes, and it's the one you don't want to try to skimp on. Even when I take, even on times when I've spent hours and hours of masking, I go to lift the tape off and I've missed areas. I mean, it's just, I've had to go in and try to fix it. So even though I spent hours and hours, it's still possible to miss an area. Especially when you have this colored tape on top of yellow paint. Sometimes it's hard to see if you get everything covered. But I've said this before in masking videos, you really need a brand new blade, and you don't want to put any pressure on the blade. As soon as you start putting pressure on the blade, it's going to want to slip. And if it slips, you could really, really screw up your paint job to the point where you might have to start over. So that's why a lot of guys don't like doing this, where they cut on the piece. This is how I've always done it. So I mean, I've messed up once or twice and I haven't had to start over yet, but I've had to do some fixes because I tried to force the blade to do something it didn't want to do. I've got to get a piece way down in there. Kind of like surgery sometimes. The trick is to work with the tape while it's loose. Leave it loose. Don't try to pull on it, and don't try to get to conform shapes that it doesn't want to conform to. Because you might get it to conform, but it will lift. And then you'll be in trouble because you won't realize that it lifted, and you'll go pull your tape up and you'll see all the areas that it bled through. So that's my main suggestion when masking. Work with the tape loose. Now this 3M tape here, you can pull this to a certain extent. To me, it has their own version of this. It's basically the same thing, but it's geared towards modelers, so it's more expensive. And I have some. I tried. I'm doing another robin on the side for someone, and I used that on the cape, and it worked really, really well. Again, on the areas where I really tried to get it to turn or conform, it wanted to lift, so I had to make sure that before I went to spray paint that I checked all those areas. I did have a couple areas where it lifted just a little bit, and I had some spray that came underneath the tape a little bit. Luckily, it wasn't bad. It was easy to fix. This piece didn't go where I wanted it to. Yeah, if I wasn't doing a gloss coat, I probably wouldn't have to mask this at all. I could probably just hand paint it and it'd be done. But since we're gloss coating it, we got to mask it. Thanks, Chris. No, I don't care. It'll look cool. I've never seen it where these parts are glossy, so I think it'll be a really nice contrast against the yellow. You can do a lot of really cool effects just by changing the different finishes of paint on the same piece. You could do everything like the same color and just change the varnishes and it would look awesome. So I'm also going to, at the same time, I'm going to mask off the shoulders because those are going to go like a metallic blue. And those will need a gloss black, a coat of gloss black before I do the metallic blue. So I'll get those masked off and I can paint the gloss black at the same time I do these parts. And then once that's dry, all you gotta do is mask off all the other parts and then they'll be ready to spray the blue. So I can get a little ahead on that. Think I'm in camera. Yeah. I'm still recording. When I'm working on my bench close up like this, I try to use my cell phone. The action cam's good, but it sounds better with the microphone on my phone, and I can get closer in. I'll show you. I will mask off this side over here because I'll show you that's actually pretty easy to do. So I'll mask off one side completely. And I'll show you. I'll show you why that part's easier. Again, tape's loose. I'm just letting it, kind of easing it to where I want to go, and I just let it flop around. I'm not forcing it. Oops. Didn't get that cut all the way. So for a while, years ago, I was trying to save money on tape, and I was using blue painter's tape, and that works to a certain extent. But I tell you what, I said this before, to me it's got, I got this tape, it's expensive, but man, it is so worth it. It just works really, really well for what we do as modelers. Okay. So like I said, I'm going to mask off the shoulder at the same time. So I can go ahead and get the black spray on that. We're going to do the same method. We're going to leave, kind of stick it on, leave it loose. Yeah, I pulled up the wrong piece of tape. That's the piece I wanted to stay on. I do that every once in a while. So I'll just do it over. Not liking the way that's going either. Sometimes I just, takes me a few tries to get it, the tape how I want it on there. a little interesting area right there. I'm going there with a small piece of tape. Just the way the sculpt is kind of cut there. A little part of the shoulder kind of comes off away from the body, just a hair. Make sure I get that masked off. Come on, tape. I think I may try one of my personal pieces. I've always wanted to try to, because like I said, if I wasn't doing a gloss coat, I would hand paint all these black parts and probably brush on. You know, I could hand brush a flat or a semi-gloss finish, and it'd probably turn out okay. I wonder if I could hand brush the automotive clear, and if it would level out enough. I may try that on a couple spoons as a test. The trick is to make sure it's not too thick. So I can get real thick real quick doing it that way. This is taking me a little bit longer than I thought right here. This part. Like I said, it's hard when you're putting yellow tape on a yellow painted surface. So I'm just going to do small pieces. I think it's just easier. I did with the faces. I'm trying to get big pieces to wrap around this. Alright, I'm probably going to stop recording here in a minute because we're going on 25 minutes of me doing the same thing over and over again. It's not the most exciting thing to watch, and I think anyone who wants to learn this kind of gets the idea of what I'm doing here. But yeah, you'll spend hours and hours and hours of masking, sometimes for just a few seconds of painting. It's pretty funny. I know a lot of guys that will do anything in their power so they don't have to mask. I don't mind it. It is tedious, but there's nothing more satisfying than when you spend a crap load of time masking something, you get done painting, you pull the tape off, and it turns out it's like, man, all that work was worth it. So these shoulder pads have some battle damage, so when I think I have an idea what I want to do with those as far as to get the chipped paint effect. Try a method that I know of, but I've never actually really tried it too much. And it's going to be using some liquid mask. We're going to try it out. I think those areas are a good candidate for this particular technique. Sorry if I'm off camera. Sometimes I just have to worry about getting a certain thing done and not worry about being on camera. Trying to show stuff on camera always slows me down. So I'm trying to make sure the camera can see what I'm doing, and at the same time make sure I'm getting done what I need to get done correctly. Show a little bit back there. Let's do some tape in too. And now that the yellow paint is down, There's a little rough area here on the inside of the shoulders that I didn't see before, and it's in the casting. It's just where they didn't sand it all the way, so I'll have to sand that down, smooth it out before I spray any paint, just to make sure it's up to snuff. Sometimes you get rough areas, you just can't avoid it, especially when you're spraying a flat coat. Anything that's really, really deeply recessed, sometimes you just, the way flat coat goes down, you get dry spray, and sometimes you can't avoid it. Just kind of the nature of it, but usually it's in an area where you can't see it anyway, so I usually don't worry about it too much. Time for a new blade. I'm having to start pushing on the blade a little bit to cut, so that means it's time for a new blade. Okay, 30 minutes of taping. Yay! Isn't this exciting, guys? Man, I'm glad I went into that pastels. It made a big difference. And it didn't take me that long to do all that pastel work. Took me maybe 20 minutes. So I just went in there and just I didn't hit every single little area. Just some of the areas where I looked like I may have blended the paint too much. It made a big difference. Again, it may not be showing up on camera because of the color so bright, but I can notice a pretty good difference as far as being able to see the shading. We don't want it like too exaggerated, but we want to make sure he's got some shape to him. See? Tedious, tedious. And no, silly putty would not be faster. At least not for me. I do like silly putty. The problem with silly putty is that it is very susceptible to being disrupted, and it's too easy to move it and have areas come unmasked. I know when I have the tape down and it's down good, I can handle whatever I'm working on without worrying about disturbing the tape and moving it and having it come away from an edge. Also, tape is not affected by gravity. I noticed that on the beast that I'm working on. I had masked some areas with putty, and I had them up on clamps, and the putty had sagged overnight, and I had to go back and redo it because gravity pulled the silly putty down. So silly putty is not something you can like really leave for a long time, because if you need to like have it suspended up on a stick or a clamp, well, gravity's going to pull it down away from whatever it is you masked. Alright, so I'll just do this one side on camera. We're almost done with the shoulder, at least. I like to show stuff in real time as much as possible, so people who want to watch this most exciting process understands the amount of time that goes into this. At least when I do it. Other guys may be faster. There are guys that are a lot faster. The way I do stuff. Most of my methods come from my car painting days. You know, when you're putting down a $100,000 paint job on a car, on a classic Thunderbird, you take your time. And yes, the paint job on a car on a classic Thunderbird can be $100,000. If you're doing a body off frame restoration, it can cost that much. I've done a few of them. I didn't get paid $100,000. I got paid nowhere near, but that's what the shop was charging the collector. We're getting there. One thing now I don't have on my phone is a time lapse capability. I think there's some apps out there to do it. I just haven't done it. I always have this on time lapse. So we're gonna sit here and watch me do this extremely slow process, which is nothing exciting to watch. But maybe if you watch it and listen to me ramble on, you'll maybe learn something about masking. So this little spot, I kind of have to make a judgment call on where to stop the blue. I'm just going to kind of guess right about here. I don't think it goes underneath the armpit too much. And you won't see this, I don't think, once the arm's on anyway. Well, actually there is a little bit of a line here. Maybe I'll just go ahead and wrap it around underneath. Yeah, I think I will. I'll look cleaner. A little bead right here. I'm going to go ahead and make that blue. I think it'll look good. I don't think you'll see it, but you know what? Now I'm looking at this. This is sculpted. It's weird because the way the sculpt is, this is the back part of the shoulder kind of merges with the body, but over here there's a definite stop. So I think I'm just gonna do this. I think my first idea was the correct idea. Come on the armpit just a little bit. Alrighty, so that's been masked. And I'll go back and double check. So for the side parts here, this is actually a little easier. I can take this tape, I can cover over the line. Push down a little bit, have the tape go down in there a little bit. And cut it. Some nice deep detail line. And that'll be easy to touch up with some black paint after I'm done painting this area if I need to. Alright, so that's the idea. So I'm going to stop recording because we're 40 minutes of me taping. So I'm going to get this all taped and then we'll show the next step. Okay, so we're in the spray booth. It took about hour and a half, 2 hours to mask all this, but this whole thing is covered in tape except for the stripes and the shoulders. I kind of did a dirty masking here on the belt because the bottom parts of the pants will go blue. We're going to do that later, so I'll do that at the same time as I do the shoulders, but this isn't going to go metallic, it's going to go a different blue. But I think we're good to go. I really won't know if everything is masked correctly until I take the tape off, so let's just go ahead and start doing it. So I'm going to just use, for the black, we're going to use my usual black, Mr. Color GX2 black. And I may do a little light sanding on some of this, we'll see if I need to. So this gets mixed 2 to 1. I don't need a whole lot. This should cover really well. So let's do that. Better. There it is. Let's mix up that much for now. Okay. Well, my little Badger paint mixer. It's basically like a coffee frother. Now this is going to go on, but this black, even though it's a gloss black, it's not going to look glossy because the surface I'm spraying onto is not like 1000 or 100% super smooth. I did go through and do a light sanding. Okay, that looks good. Just double checking all my edges. The only way I'm going to find out is to spray this and paint it and then take the masking tape off later, find out if it's all done right. The more thing I'm concerned about is if an edge is lifted and I get some spray underneath the tape. That's typically what happens to me. I usually don't get anything around the edges because I'm really conscious about getting the edges down really well. It's usually an edge is lifted somewhere and I get paint underneath that edge. That's what some notorious for. So this looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and start spraying. Only way to do it. Another way to help avoid paint going underneath your tape is don't put it on real wet. Just put it on dry. Not dry, but you don't want to flood the surface. And back off. Keep your air pressure a little bit lower so you're not forcing paint up underneath something that it doesn't need to go underneath. But this will be nice and glossy after I spray the gloss coat. That looks good. No, not even on camera, sorry. Let's point it up so you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm just kind of putting it on light, not putting it on real heavy. I just need to cover it, that's it. So I've decided not to base coat the shoulders yet. There's some, just like I mentioned, some rough areas down in this edge. That's just from the casting. You can see kind of like the artifacts from the printing and molding. So I'm gonna get this black done, and then before I spray those, I'll sand those smooth. So we're just gonna concentrate on the stripes right now. Make sure you get all around all the edges. Again, I'm not putting it on real wet. I don't want to flood the surface and have it, reduce the risk of paint going underneath the tape or underneath an edge or something. Good. So an hour and a half of masking, 2 hours of masking, for literally less than 5 minutes of spraying paint. And that's sad. Now I'll spend more time spraying the clear coat, but as far as just spraying paint, that's really it. So I'm gonna let this dry for a little bit. Not long. We'll come back and check it one more time, make sure everything's covered, and if it looks good, we'll spray the clear coat and get that curing. So let that hang there for a little bit, and we'll be back. Okay, so I went through and looked at everything and just gave it one more or less little mist coat of paint. Now we're gonna mix up our clear coat. Again, you guys seen this before. The U-Pole automotive clear. Mix this 4 parts to 1, 4-part clear coat to 1 part hardener. And I tend to waste a little bit because just the way, actually, I can do this, trying to think. Yeah, let's do what I normally do. I usually do like, that's just way too much. I don't need that much for it. So, I'll get some pipettes, and we'll do, there's 2 mils. And then we'll get 1 mil of it's actually not that much. 4. Let's do 6, 8 mils of clear. Don't ever want to use the same pipette for your clear coat and your hardener. You will kick the clear coat off. It would take a very long time to cure with that little bit of hardener in there, but you don't want to mix them up. So got 8 mils in there, which means I need 2 mils of the hardener. There we go. It's nice to have 10 mils all together, which I do. A little cup here. probably still a little more than what I need, but it's an easy measurement to do. And just like we always do before, we'll put on kind of one dust coat. We'll let that flash off for a few minutes, and we'll come on and follow it up with like 2 wet coats. The first coat is basically just to give the next few coats something to stick to. So I'm gonna have my mask on because this stuff is nasty. Crank my PSI up just a little bit, not much. Yeah, we're just kind of misting it on at first. Don't worry about getting it really shiny yet. Alright, we're going to let that sit for about 5 minutes, and then we'll come back on and do a wet coat. Alrighty, let that dry for about 5 minutes, and now we're going to put on a wet coat. When I'm spraying this, I spray it so I'm catching a highlight, because the highlight tells me if it's going on smooth. Once I see that the highlight is nice and shiny and smooth, then I know I've got a nice coat on there. This is kind of like a double wet coat, but that's okay. We'll let this flash off for a while, and we'll do another one, see what it looks like. Alright, we'll let that dry for a little while, and we'll come back and do see what it looks like. Alright, well, while I wait for that first initial kind of thing of clear coat to dry, we're going to go ahead and start working on the faces. And the angle's kind of weird here, sorry, because I got my camera off to the side of my bench. So the masking looks really good. I didn't get any bleed through. So I'm going to hand paint these. I think it's just the easiest way to do it. So I have Vallejo, just Vallejo black in my cup, and I put a little water in it just to thin it down, so just go on a little smoother. And I got some gloves on here. We're going to basically just kind of start putting this on. And it'll take a couple of coats probably, but this should dry to a nice finish. I'm done. So I'm just using a flat brush to kind of get the large area. Yeah, we're gonna get just a smaller brush to get in behind the head here. Nice thing about these paints is that they come off pretty easily with water. If you mess up like I just did. Of course, the sooner you catch it, the easier it comes off. So I'll just do a little bit of this on camera, and then I'll do the rest off camera, because again, this is a slow process. I may not get this done tonight. I want to get the clear coat done on the body, and it's getting late already, so I'll just do some of this tonight. Sorry, I wasn't on camera because I was trying to see what I was doing. So I think you get the idea, just slow and steady. So what I'm doing here is I'm flattening my brush against this big fin and just kind of lightly pushing it down into that crevice to get paint where I want it. And I don't have a whole lot of paint on the brush, but it's a good way to kind of get it in a tight spot without getting paint on the other surface. So maybe I can show you here a little bit on this. So basically I flatten the brush out. I just kind of go in here and just kind of push it right into the corner. A little bit at a time. Just like that. This would have been really hard to mask to get the tape down in here. Maybe what I'll do is I'll do one side and I'll show you one side. Again, right here, I'm just going to kind of flatten my brush out and just kind of push it into that crevice. And get a nice clean line in there, just like that. Okay, so now we need to decide where to cut the black off. I think right there, just like that. I'm just going to kind of come across the back side. Not that you're going to see this, but just do it like that. Make a line kind of in that crook right there. Oh, I got a fingerprint here. That's not good. Trying to avoid that. That's being a little stubborn. So make sure I don't have any paint on my fingers. I didn't think I did. So the tricky part is going to be like underneath here on the face. Basically, you want to outline everything first and then fill it in. It's a slow process. as most things are. Slow and steady. About time to go put another coat of clear coat on the body, so I'll go do that here in a second. A little thumbprint that I need to work on getting off up there. It's not that big of a deal. Sometimes if a Q-tip doesn't work, you can take a toothpick, and this was taught to me a while ago. It's actually a really interesting trick. You can actually just kind of use a toothpick and just kind of real gently scrape off paint on an area that you don't want it. Can be careful, but that's a cool trick I learned from another modeler years ago. And these eyes will get gloss coated at the very end. That'll be the last step on the faces. So I'll do this one side, and then you guys again will get the idea of what I'm doing here. I'll probably take probably 2 coats of paint. I'm not putting it on real thick because I got it watered down a little bit. Help it dry slower and level out. Use Vallejo's hand brush beautifully. I'll get my big brush out again. Not my big brush, but this medium-sized brush. Try to keep your brush strokes going in the same direction. There, you guys get an idea what that's going to look like. Pretty happy with that. I think it's gonna look good. Alrighty, so I'm gonna put this down and go finish up the clear coat on the body. And then once I'm done hand painting these guys and clear coating that, we'll decide if I want to keep going with this video or just do another work in progress for the next color. It's getting late, so I won't worry about painting the rest of this head tonight or the other head, but and then we'll see how this dries down. If this dries down the way I want, I'll just leave it. Otherwise, I'll come back and We'll brush coat on a satin finish because Chris wants a semi-gloss slash satin finish on the black. Initially he's going to do gloss, but I think on the heads the satin will look much better than real shiny. So it's a good choice. Oh, kind of messed up it a little bit. Alright. It's looking pretty good. So I'll put a little more water on it to try to smooth this out a little bit. Got a little too much going on there. All right. So I'll let that dry and see what it looks like, but that's only pretty good, I think. So I'm going to finish the clear coat. And I'm going to call it a night because I'm tired. It's late. But we're getting there. That's going to look really good when it's done. I have a stick. There it is. So the first round of clear looks pretty good. Let's do it again. I'm gonna let that flash off again. I'll do one more and this will be done. So I'm gonna call the gloss coat done. I'm just gonna do one more coat after this and it'll look good. So like I said, I'm gonna hand paint the rest of the heads, not tonight but probably tomorrow night, and then we'll go from there. This will probably take a day or two to cure anyway before I mask for the next color, so stay tuned for the next part. Okay, so I went ahead and decided to go ahead and take this masking tape off now. My initial plan was to leave it on and then paint the shoulders and stuff, but what I wanted to do, I was thinking about this last night, is I wanted to take it off to see if I had any areas that I missed masking wise, and there are a few spots. And what I didn't want to do is keep painting and adding more paint to those areas that I may have missed. So I want to show you how I take care of those little spots where I may have not gotten masking tape all over everywhere. So like a good example is, I'm not sure if it shows up in camera, but right here's a little speck. So I've got a little bit of water here. I've got one of my 3M ultra fine sanding sponges. This one's been used quite a bit, so it's really old and used a lot. These are equivalent. The range is 800 to 1,000 grit sandpaper, so it's perfect for this kind of thing because it's not too, especially if it's used. Now, if this was a brand new sponge, I wouldn't do it because it'd be too aggressive. So what I do is I get one of these hobby Q-tips, and I got a little bit of water, and I wet it. And like right here where I got a little spray through where I missed the tape, I'm just going to go through and I'm just going to wipe this over it over and over again until that's gone. So I've got enough top coat on this where I can do this. And if it gets a little shiny, I can just go back and hit it real quick with an airbrush with some flat coat. So that little spot's gone already. And I just gotta, I had a Q-tip, here's a Q-tip. There's a Q-tip here to wipe it off. And that little spot's gone. So I've got a few of these I gotta take care of. Nothing real major. My masking is pretty good. But with the amount of masking I had, this whole thing was masked off. There was a good chance that I would have missed a spot or two. Like here's a spot right here that you can see pretty predominantly. So we're gonna go in there. We're just gonna. I'm not sanding. I'm not going back and forth. I'm just wiping. And if you're careful enough, eventually that'll come off. Now, if I do happen to go through, which I hope I don't, I'll have to airbrush and spot that in. But the reason I've got this wrapped around this little Q-tip is so kind of like so I have a point, so I can be real specific. I could also use like these tweezers, so I got even a harder point because I just want to sand in that one spot. I don't want to really sand around it. In frame, yeah, in frame. And I don't want to sand the shiny spots. The stripes turned out really good from last night. I'll just do this again with the Q-tip. It's working better. A little more water in here. So if I would have just kept spraying like onto the blue paint and on, it'd just been building up layers and layers and all these little spots where I missed tape. So it was better just to do this and then remask those areas, which won't take as long as the stripes. Those took me a couple hours to mask off. So now the spot's starting to go away a little bit. Just do a little bit at a time. And I'm doing it wet because it'll be less aggressive than if I was trying to sand it dry. And if this doesn't want to sand off, or if I go through, I'll have to spot it in. You can see how shiny those stripes turned out. They turned out really good. Real happy with them. It's a nice contrast against the flat finish of the yellow. So that was a good call by Chris to do that. So I'll probably call this work in progress done. This is actually work in progress number 6. It says number 5. It's number 6. And then the next work in progress will be doing the blue. That way this video is not like 3 hours long. So this one's kind of stubborn because this is actually where there was no tape at all. Other areas where it kind of went through a little bit, it's where like an edge lifted and it kind of fanned underneath the tape a little bit. Like right here is a very subtle spot. It's barely noticeable what's there, and that should come off right away. Yeah, that came off like super quick. It wasn't that there wasn't tape there, like an edge lift, and the paint kind of misted underneath it and just kind of fogged on top of the surface a little bit. And that's what most of these are. Here's a little spot here. Again, when it's like that, it comes off real easily. See, that one's gone. No, not quite. Got a little again. That's why I wipe it off every once in a while so I can see what I'm doing. Actually, had a hard time finding it again. So that's the little spot's gone. There's a little spot here, like right here. You can see there. I'm going to do my best not to go through. So I'll show you one or two, and then that's kind of how you take care of those little areas if you happen to miss mask. That's why it's important to have a good top coat, good level of sealer on all your steps. It's just about gone. Okay, and then that spot's gone. So that's how you do that. So you have to go through and just kind of be real careful and sand them off. There's a couple spots way down in there I won't be able to get to, so I'm just gonna get some yellow paint, like watercolor, and match it as close as I can to this, and just go in there and oh, actually that wasn't paint, it was just a little fleck of paint. So I may have gotten them. Some of these are like water spots from me sanding some of the other spots, but yeah, this looks really good. Nice contrast. So also I'm going to go in here and I'm going to clean up these lines a little bit. I don't have, move my camera to the drawer. I need to go get another extra small tipped India ink pen. Give me a second. I go through them pretty quick. I have a small, but I think it's too big. So what I want to do is I'll go in here and I'll just clean up this line a little bit with some India ink. Yeah, so this one's too big, it's not going to go in there. With extra small, I can get down in the crack and just clean that line up a little bit. But yeah, so this is looking pretty good. There's a spot right there I got to do. Yeah, man, this looks good. Really, really happy with this. And I haven't finished hand painting the heads yet, but I can throw on one of the unmasked heads real quick to see what it looks like. See that on camera? Yeah, let me get one of the unmasked heads and see what it looks like. So here is the stock head. It came with the statue. It's looking pretty sharp, I think. Man, that looks really good in my opinion. And then let's look at this one. This is the custom head, or one of them, that I spent so much time trying to get to fit. It fits in there pretty good. Looking sharp. Alright, so I'm going to call this work in progress done. That covered the masking off of the black and that stuff. I did the yellow in the last one, so. And then the next one, work in progress 6 or 7. I don't know. I'm not sure what number I'm on. I'll work on the blue. So even though it's a little more work for me, I'm gonna go ahead and remask the shoulders off. I'm actually gonna let this clear coat dry a little bit longer, so I don't want to put masking tape on before it's fully cured. And same thing with like along the edge here where the masking may have gotten just a little out of whack. You just come in here with like an India ink pen or something and just kind of line the edge of it really gently, real easily. or with the paintbrush, real fine paintbrush, and some of the Vallejo paint that's water based that can wipe off real easily if you mess up. So yeah, that looks awesome. I'm really happy with the way it looks. So that's it for this work in progress. Stay tuned for the next one. Thanks. Bye. Oh, hold on. Not that it's done yet, but since I'm here, let's go on. This is the stock head that came with it. You can see I've only got part of the half of it masked, painted off, but it's gonna look good too. Pretty cool. All right, so that's it for this work. Now that's it for this work in progress. Stay tuned for the next one.